Hi everyone. So we got mosquitoes around here. Hi everyone. It's a beautiful morning here, and I'm setting out to make a video, and I got my all-purpose Beatles shirt on here to do so. When I came here, taking a little ride to the park this morning, my intention originally was to just discuss the latest feelings that I have on the new Sirius XM Beatles Channel. And that's what this video is basically going to be, but something special happened on the ride over here that I thought would make it a little more interesting. Now, those of us who are into the Beatles, or whether you're older and you were around when the Beatles were first doing their thing and you bought their records when you were a kid or a teenager, or when they were new records, or whether you collected the solo albums like I did as I got older, there's always that magic time when the Beatles are going to be coming out with a new record, either as a group or as solo artists. And we always like to know what the new record is going to be, what it's going to sound like. And I have a lot of memories myself of what it was like to get a new Paul McCartney album, George Harrison album, Ringo Starr album. And I was able to get the excitement of John Lennon's Double Fantasy when it first was announced and released. And I remember the day of release running to get it. Well, on the ride over here, I had not yet heard the new Ringo Starr song. Ringo Starr is going to have a new album out, and we now know the title of the album. The album title is going to be Give More Love. And the first song, I guess, off there, the single, is the same title, Give More Love. And on the ride over here, when I was preparing to make this video, I hadn't yet heard that new song, but fate smiled upon me on this beautiful morning, and as I was driving to the park and I had the Sirius XM channel on, a nice little feature happened there where we had a segment with Chris Carter, who does Breakfast with the Beatles on this station, and he was speaking with Ringo Starr at the Capitol Records Tower on Ringo's 77th birthday, which just passed on July 7th. And they played a snippet of this with Chris Carter and Ringo talking. So on the drive here, I was getting to listen to that. And it was really nice to, in addition to hearing the Beatles channel and getting to hear all the music, it's always nice, the idea of hearing a new release, and a new interview with Ringo or Paul. It makes you wish they had this Sirius XM, 30 years ago, and we could have got George in there too. And when the solo Beatles were a lot younger. But anyway, that's just the way that I handle things, folks. I look at the clouds and the sunshine, the negative and the positive. Anyway, so there was Ringo, a little snippet, and he was discussing, first of all, Sirius XM. And Ringo said, yeah, this is great. Ringo listens to Sirius XM radio, the Beatles channel. And he says, I loved it when Ringo said, and I'm hearing songs that I've never heard on the radio before. And that's kind of like how I feel about it. And Ringo was talking about the song Blind Man, that he hadn't heard the song Blind Man in a long time. And well, I think Chris Carter might have brought that up. He said he heard Blind Man twice or something like that. And Ringo went on to say how, that was from a movie that he made, 1972 film, Spaghetti Western, and he said he wrote the song and it was never used in the actual movie, he mentioned. But I'm with Ringo all the way. I mean, what I like about this channel most is when you get to hear deep cuts, solo cuts usually, that you haven't heard on the radio so often. You're not tired of them yet. Some people maybe not have even heard these songs. And I remember Chris Carter showed that he was a knowledgeable Beatles fan and Ringo fan by saying, I think Spooky Weirdness, we heard that too. The song, a very obscure, silly track from Ringo's, I think it's the Rotogravure album, or maybe Ringo the Fourth. And Ringo said, I don't think they're going to play that one. So it was good to see that Ringo's aware of it. I always like when the Beatles discuss things other than, what it was like going to America on the Ed Sullivan Show again, or, how it came that they got together or broke up. I like to hear different things. So to hear that Ringo listens to the station, and that Ringo actually is thrilled to hear songs that he doesn't usually hear, including Blind Man, one of Ringo's obscure tracks, was a great thing. And then they went on to discuss the album a little bit, the new Ringo album. We have a release date on it now. Ringo's new album called Give More Love comes out on September 15th. September 15th. So that's the date. And hopefully it'll do well, and more people will be interested in it. If they're listening to the Beatles Channel, they'll be aware of it, maybe support it a little more, whereas fans might not have otherwise. And Ringo said, and I also read this on a Beatles website this morning, there are some tracks on this new album, I think there are 4 tracks that are going to be reboots of old, I think, well-known songs already. And although, I think there's supposed to be 10 new tracks on the Ringo album, and then 4 reboots of prominent songs. And that's a shame, really, because, we don't need that. A while ago, Ringo did a reboot of his song Step Lightly from the famous Ringo album. And he did it on Ringo 2012, that album. And we didn't need another version of Step Lightly. Ringo says that there's a new version, like we need another one of Back Off Boogaloo. Back Off Boogaloo is one of my all-time favorite Ringo songs. He already tried a reboot of it in 1981 on the Stop and Smell the Roses album. Ringo's known for this, recycling things, rebooting things. But it was interesting enough that Ringo explained that they found a tape of an early version of Back Off Boogaloo, and Ringo said we couldn't figure out who the guitarist was. Then when we were listening to the guitar, Ringo said it was A, D, and E, and then Ringo realized it's me on guitar. So Ringo's playing guitar, and supposedly, if I understood right what Ringo said, you have the old vocal from the original tape, and then there's a new vocal over that. So I know there's going to be a Back Off Boogaloo 2017. Okay, for those of you who think we need another one. But they also played the song, the title song, Give More Love. And that's always an exciting experience when you get to hear, a brand new Beatles or solo Beatles song for the first time. Where were you when they first played it? What were you doing? And I'll try to always remember this moment making this video and driving here to the park. It was a special moment. I was so happy to hear it, under those circumstances. I didn't come here prepared to talk about it. Now I can. Well, the song, it was a decent song. Sometimes there's solo Beatles songs I've heard on first listen that I love, and more often than not, I either don't like them or I think they're just, okay, and then they get better maybe later with time and re-listens. Well, this particular Ringo song, the new one, it sounded to me, typical modern Ringo, stuff that we've heard since the 90s and the 2000s. I would say it was a pretty good song. It didn't knock me over. I don't think it's going to, unfortunately, be a hit. I would love for it to be a hit, love for Ringo to get a hit, but I don't think that's going to happen with this song. Some of the past songs that were good contenders were songs like Weight of the World could have been a big hit, I thought. And even the song Walk With You that Ringo released on the Why Not album that has Paul McCartney doing dual vocals with him, that was a lot more, hit-worthy. So this song, Give More Love, aside from the fact that it's the same thing again, love, love, love. I've got nothing against love, folks. I will pick love over hate every time. But I just think that it gets a little cliched after a while. And, Ringo already had an album called Choose Love in the early 2000s. Now we got a new album called Give More Love. And so many of his songs have love in there. And I always wonder whether Ringo's sincere about that, or whether it's a matter of Ringo kind of just putting up an image, because Ringo's always with his peace and love, and that's great. And I believe that he is sincere about it to a point. But Ringo's notorious for being in foul moods. If you meet him on the wrong day, he can be rather grumpy and dismissive of fans. And again, like I say, I roll both ways, the positive and the negative. So, not mean to just criticize, but Ringo has the famous video from 2008 where he said, I'm warning you with peace and love, no more autographs. It's an old joke that we have of Ringo these days. Peace and love, no autographs. So let's get to the song, though. As I said, I'm getting away from it, rambling on with it. Like I said, the song was okay. It was decent. I need a few more listens to really see if it's going to knock me down. I don't think I'm ever going to think it's a great song or anything. It's certainly not that. While listening to it, I thought that it reminded me in the structure, the general way it was arranged. It sounded a little like the sound of the song that Ringo sang for George Harrison, "Never Without You." So it had that "Never Without You" kind of I don't know, approach to it. I thought in places, thought I was listening to the same build-up of that. So it's okay. It's a pretty good. We'll see how it does. So that's that part out of the way, and I see that I'm 10 minutes into the video already. Well, I came here primarily to talk about the Sirius XM channel. It debuted on May the 18th of this year, and it's not quite July 18th yet. We're not quite in the 2 months yet, but for all intents and purposes, we'll say the channel, I've been listening to it for 2 months, pretty much just about every day. I only listen to it in my car. I have it set up, the Beatles Channel, my car radio, and I'm a Beatles fan. I'm a big Beatles fan and collector, but even I get tired of listening to the Beatles. And in fact, I don't listen to the Beatles. That may shock a lot of people. I think in a whole year, maybe I listen to a proper Beatles album, perhaps 1 or 2, maybe 3 Beatles albums a year, in their entirety, I mean. And the reason I say that is because I mostly like to hear stuff that I'm not overdosed on. I love all the Beatles music, but I prefer, if I'm going to reach for an album, I'm going to reach for a John Lennon solo album, a Paul McCartney, George Harrison, or Ringo Starr solo album. If it has to be Beatles, I'll grab the BBC tracks, or anthology, or some bootleg that maybe has some live concert, or some outtakes, alternate versions of songs that are played to death. So for me personally, although I love the Beatles, and I'm a collector, and I'm more into the memorabilia and getting the artifacts now, and interviews and rare footage, the actual catalog albums, I think there are 213 Beatles songs, or somewhere around that, a little over 200 songs. But the regular Beatles catalog of proper songs, I don't need to hear them every day. So I'm going to talk about the positives and the negatives of the Sirius XM channel and how I feel. To start with, the positives, it really is a good channel. This Beatles Sirius XM station is better than anything I could have thought they'd come up with. I mean, they really have done a good job with the programming. I understand they have to tailor this more to the casual fan, people who are going to call, people are going to tune in, and they're going to want to hear "I Want to Hold Your Hand," "A Day in the Life," "Hello, Goodbye," "Come Together," "Hey Jude," "Get Back." I can go on forever. They're going to want to hear these songs when they turn it on. For me, I have to tell you, it's gotten to a point where every time I turn the radio on, almost every time, I hear a song that I don't want to hear anymore. I'll turn it on and there's "Hello, Goodbye." I shut the radio off. Turn it on and there's "A Day in the Life." Shut the radio off. Turn it on, we get "Come Together," "Back in the USSR," "Drive My Car." I mean, really, can you name any Beatles songs, if you're a big fan, that aren't played out to you? I mean, I don't mind. Like today I turned it on, I heard "I'm a Loser," and I heard "The Night Before." I don't mind listening to songs. Those are the songs that I personally want to hear. Songs like "I'll Be Back," "I'll Get You," "Another Girl," "The Night Before," songs like that. "Every Little Thing." You get the picture. Songs that are not the same typical. I don't need to hear "Strawberry Fields Forever," "Penny Lane." I don't need to hear "Hey Jude," "Get Back," "Let It Be," "While My Guitar Gently Weeps," "Here Comes the Sun," the same song, "Obla-di, Obla-da." There's certain songs that when I turn the radio on, I personally will shut it off, or I'll go over to talk radio, AM talk radio. Actually, we're turn on talk radio for 5 or 10 minutes, then I go back to the Beatles channel to see if anything's changed. So, again, on the positive side, the way they're setting this up is the right way to do it. They should be playing more popular Beatles songs and occasionally sprinkling in rarities and, solo tracks, unusual BBC recordings. That's the right formula, because it makes sense to play to the biggest audience. The biggest audience would like to hear, 75% popular Beatles or so, 25% lesser known solo stuff. So they're doing a good job with that. I'm just speaking for myself personally, trying to be objective. And personally, although I think it's a good idea and a good setup, and I know why they do it, for me personally, I would be happy if they just made it the solo Beatles channel. I would be happy if they had an alternate station where it was only solo material and deep solo material. So that's how I feel about it. I've gotten to the point where familiarity breeds contempt. There's that old saying that if you're too much familiar with something, you should start to dislike it. I don't want it to get to a point where I can't stand the Beatles anymore. And I'll be honest with you, almost every time when I put the radio station on, I actually have had enough, and I really don't want to hear any more Beatles. I have to be in a really good standard Beatles popular songs mood to just let it play. I'm much more excited. Like the other day, I heard, and some of you will love this, I heard a Paul McCartney instrumental track, solo. And, I know everything solo by the Beatles pretty much, but I didn't recognize this track, and I'm like, this isn't bad. I wonder what track this is. And I looked at the screen, and it said Heather. It's a song from the Driving Rain album, and you know how much I hate that album. And I actually liked the song. I'm liking it. And I said to myself, hey, that's one of the benefits of the Beatles channel. One of the benefits is when you get a song in that kind of a context, maybe you just listened to Norwegian Wood for the 200,000th time, and then you listen to Birthday for the 100,000th time, and then after that they go into Paul McCartney doing an interesting instrumental, and I say, this is a breath of fresh air. What is this? It's a song from Thriving Pain, the album that I can't stand, right? So, hey, there's hope. That's what I like about it. I mean, that's my favorite thing about it, as I say, the solo tracks, the deep solo tracks. I heard unusual songs. I heard Ringo's cover version of She's About a Mover, which is great. I've heard George Harrison doing Unconsciousness Rules on Baltimore Oriole, 2 odd tracks from his Somewhere in England album. I heard Be Here Now, a really beautiful track from Living in the Material World. Just a lot. I mean, I could go on forever naming a lot of obscure things. But it's funny, there's so much to pick from when it comes to solo material, and yet they seem to still, even with the solo material, they seem to still want to stay with the familiar. Now, one song, like, for example, that I hear over and over again is John Lennon's Power to the People. I've heard Power to the People, seems like 9 or 10 times, and recently I heard it within an 11-hour span. I was driving at night, and I heard Power to the People, and then the next morning, about 11 hours later, I counted, Power to the People came on again. I mean, there's so much wealth of solo material, folks, that you can really, it could be a long time before you hear the same solo song twice. So they really should try to tap into that more. That's my critique of that. Then we go to the other features that they have on here, which I'm not big on. I've got to be honest with you. One of them is songs that inspired the Beatles, songs that artists that inspired the Beatles, and I love all these artists. Don't get me wrong. I mean, Chuck Berry, the Everly Brothers, Elvis, Little Richard, Fats Domino, on and on and on. And I love that music, and I'm always sticking up and defending 1950s music, kind of disappearing from the scene lately. However, when I listen to a Beatles channel, I don't want to hear Fats Domino or any of those. Buddy Holly even. I love Buddy Holly, but I love to hear Buddy Holly, but for some reason it just doesn't fit when I'm listening to the Beatles channel. That's my personal feeling. But even more annoying to me is something they have, people who were inspired by the Beatles and did cover versions of Beatles songs. Some of them are interesting, I got to admit. I wish I could remember them now. I mean to get a memo pad, because to be quite honest with you, as much as I don't really like hearing Beatle cover songs, some of them have been very interesting. The Beat Bugs, I heard the Beat Bugs do a couple of interesting versions. One of them was I'm a Loser. I thought that was interesting. And there were April Wine. I can't remember the song, but April Wine, I remember the band, did a really good Beatles cover. And somebody did a great cover of If I Needed Someone. I have to write them down and maybe do a video on it later. I have discovered, I must confess, in a way, some Beatle cover songs by other artists that I never knew existed that I really liked. But most of them are terrible, or just they don't offer anything new from the original. I don't see the point in really listening to it. So I don't know. I think when you have the inspiration songs that inspired the Beatles and other people who were inspired by the Beatles, I just think that takes away from the actual Beatles and solo Beatles. I would be happy listening to Beatles and solo Beatles, rare, common, live, outtakes, alternate versions. I would rather hear Beatles and solo Beatles all the time. I think there's more than enough wealth of material if you take all the solo albums. Okay, the video is longer than I wanted it to be, but I can talk up a storm. So let me just say one other thing. A couple of times I've stumbled into these things where they have certain people get to pick their favorite Beatles songs. Now, yesterday I heard Ron Howard, who I'm a fan of. I like Ron Howard. First of all, from all I can see, Ron Howard seems like a really great guy. Ron Howard seems like the kind of guy I'd like to meet and say hello to and have a beer with. Ron Howard seems like a terrific person. And I've always enjoyed him on TV, whether it's as Opie, when he plays Opie on Andy Griffith, or when he's Richie Cunningham on Happy Days. I like some of the directorial work he's done. In fact, the movie Night Shift, one of his early comedies, is absolutely one of my favorite of all-time movies of the 80s. So I like Ron Howard, and I loved his 8 Days a Week documentary that he made, last year. However, they had Ron Howard on picking an hour of his favorite Beatles songs, and folks, I couldn't take it. I mean, it was the same stuff. He's picking stuff like Blackbird, which they play a gazillion times, Come Together. I'm going to tell you, I never need to hear Come Together on a radio station ever again. When I play Abbey Road in its entirety, fine, but I don't need it on a radio station. Ron Howard's picking that. He's picking Eleanor Rigby. I can't stand to hear Eleanor Rigby anymore, folks. What is it about Eleanor Rigby? I remember the first time I was discovering Eleanor Rigby when I was a kid, and I actually had a 45, the B-side of Yellow Submarine. I played it over and over again. It's a great song. It's a beautiful song. All the same time, it's a sad song. But I really love Eleanor Rigby in a way, but I am just so burned out on that song. And here's Ron Howard picking it. You get the idea. He's picking all these. He picks All You Need Is Love. I mean, how many times do we hear All You Need Is Love on not only this channel but on regular radio? And that's part of it. I mean, regular radio is repetitious enough. We don't need it on the Sirius XM Beatles Channel too. And finally, I heard Ron Howard say, "And now I'm going to play a song called Hey Jude." And I said, "That's it. Radio off." That was it. That was the end. I mean, folks, come on. Hey Jude is the most overplayed Beatles song. And what gets me about those shows, and sometimes they do them where they'll have people, I forget what they call it. I don't know. It's a moment where some people get to pick their 4 favorite songs. You send your email into Sirius, and they'll choose you maybe, and you could be on the air, and you can be disc jockeying or announcing 4 of your favorite Beatles songs. The problem with Ron Howard, the problem with the 4 people when they pick them all the time, whatever state they're from, excuse me, is that it's the same typical songs. They're not picking any songs that are any different than if you weren't even listening to these people. I mean, if they did without Ron Howard and without these people picking their songs, Sirius XM would be playing this stuff anyway. It's the same. What's the difference? What does it matter whether Ron Howard chooses All You Need Is Love? Ron Howard also picked A Day in the Life, by the way. Surprise, surprise. I mean, they're going to play that a gazillion times even without Ron Howard. So I don't understand the purpose of this. I'm Peter from Los Angeles, and here's my top 4 Beatles songs. I'm Barbara from Minnesota, and here's my top 4 Beatles songs. They're the same thing. Strawberry Fields Forever, Penny Lane. It's always the same. Although I have to say, there was one time when a guy actually picked 4 obscure solo Beatles songs, and that's more my speed. I also have a problem in a way with, as I made an earlier video and I've since deleted it on this. It's when they do things like the Peter Asher show. I mean, I listened to some of the Peter Asher show, and he was playing stuff that has nothing to do with the Beatles. Look, I understand that Peter Asher's sister was Jane Asher, and Paul dated Jane Asher. I understand all that. I know there's a connection and a friendship between the Ashers and Paul. But I don't need... And I love Peter and Gordon. I love to hear World Without Love and some others. But I don't really need to hear Peter Asher playing songs that are not really related to the Beatles. I mean, it kills me sometimes. I mean, Tom Petty, for example. I love Tom Petty and the Heartbreakers. I love Tom Petty. He's a favorite of mine. But the other day, I'm listening to the Peter Asher talk show, and for whatever reason, I tuned in late. He's playing the song "Don't Come Around Here No More." I like the song. I like Petty, but do I need to hear "Don't Come Around Here No More" when I'm listening to the Beatles Channel? I don't understand that. So that's my pros and cons, on the channel. I'm actually thinking, it's funny, when I was preparing for this video, I was thinking maybe I would just let my subscription just lapse. To be honest with you, I'm late with my payment. I have a monthly payment plan. I know a lot of people will tell me there's ways of getting around this, where you don't have to pay it all. You can cancel and then reapply and all this stuff. I have a monthly plan. I've been delinquent in my payment the second month. I don't care. And they've been telling me, we may disconnect you, we may disconnect the station, or maybe if we don't disconnect you, you'll keep accruing until you call to cancel it. Either call to cancel, you'll keep accruing charges month by month by month. I don't know which way I'm going to go yet. I have toyed with the idea of actually canceling this. But then again, I hear a great thing like this morning where I heard a bunch of good songs, and Ringo Starr was interviewed, and they played a cut from his new album. And I said, no, this is good, And I'm listening to shows like the Fab Forum. I like the Fab Forum. Tom Frangione is on there, and he's a real asset because Tom is a Beatles expert. He knows what he's talking about. So it's always a joy to hear Tom. Dennis Elsis, and I'm sorry I forget the name of the other host, they don't know as much. I thought that Dennis Elsis knew a lot more about the Beatles since he got that great interview with John Lennon on WNEW radio in New York in 1974, but they don't know that much. A lot of things that Tom Frangione tells them for the first time it's news to them. They never knew that. Really? I never knew that? Well, great. But so I do like the show, the Fab Forum, though. I like Beatles talk shows. That's why I'm talking here, right? I like talking, discussing. Well, anyway, so here we are 2 months into it, and I guess after all is said and done, I'll keep the Beatles channel for a while longer. I'll probably keep it permanently. I won't really let it go. But that's it. That's my thoughts. Half hour here. Sorry for the length of this, and I had a lot to say. Beatles forever, everybody, even if we don't listen to them every day. Take care.